Craig, should we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Nothing like a little bit of Essential 8 at 10 o'clock in the morning here. And I suppose, I mean, the riff that I was just on around the state of cybersecurity in Australia, I mean, from my perspective, I've been in security for 25 years. And just to give you a hint on that, when I started, I actually had hair. And I've been in Australia for a large proportion of those 25 years and working in cybersecurity, in the trenches, as it were, as an implementer, as a trainer, as an advisor, and I've worked in the technology scene around it. Let's make an assessment. Where are we at? What is the state of security in Australia? And I will give it basically a failing grade. And as I said in our kind of introductory banter, Thad, security is hard. If it were easy, would we be having this conversation? I don't think we would be. And there's a dearth of skills out there. Security tools and technologies are hard to implement, and they're expensive. And I think we have to give credit where credit is due to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, the ACSC, which performs a public service to Australian organizations to help uplift their security with some low-hanging fruit. And so the Essential 8 stems from what's termed as the top 35, I believe, that come out of the ISM, or the Information Security Manual for this nation. And the Essential 8 is basically like a distillation of what is prescribed in these information security controls. And you can summarize the Essential 8, lifting the bar to do the basics. So, for example, backups, doing backups. I don't know how many organizations we visit where it's like, no, we don't do that, and it's unfortunate, right? But these are the basics, and the Essential 8 is a prescriptive list of things that include, disabling Office macros, that could introduce risk into your organization, and then of course controls related to MFA, using multi-factor authentication, which is a little bit different than just simply two-factor, and other things. Throw in if you want there, Thad. I don't need to rattle further.
Look, absolutely right. And we'll touch on some of the changes to the MFA, and it is an evolving list all the time, which is nice.
As it should be. These lists should never be static, right? They should never be static, because the threat landscape changes all the time, right?
Changes, right? A year ago, we didn't have to worry about script kiddies using AI to go write little Python scripts that go DOS your website, right? It's a completely different ball game today, and every year it's this way. But that ACSC website, or cyber.gov.au, is a fantastic resource, to kind of keep there and move your way up the maturity levels. You might be maturity level 1 today, but you can set goals to be maturity level 2 tomorrow or in 6 months' time, and then slowly raise you up to maturity level 3. So I'll link that into the chat here in a few minutes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but
and who falls into the scope of this is, like, officially speaking, if you're a governmental entity, you're an organization or an affiliate, you have to abide by the Essential 8, and then you can get assessed by the ASD on various things. But any organization can use that as a guiding beacon and use the very English language, very easy to read materials that the ACSC publishes around how to get there. And what it means, right? And I think it's a fantastic resource that as stated, the state of security in Australia is quite poor, in my opinion. And here is a great guiding light for the industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think because we see it on the front lines too, we do hear about people ending up paying the ransom to get their data back. And it's like, let's take a step back here, and how did you get here in the first place? We can send you cool tools that unencrypt your data, no problem, but are you actually going to make changes tomorrow, sort of thing? And 99% of the time, the answer is no. We're not going to make those changes on the smaller level or the SMB space. And it's like, oh, come on.
But that
Yeah.
change is scary. Change is hard, right?
Change is
and
scary, right?
and this is in the spirit of security being hard, you touched on it here, is the idea is that the threat landscape and the risks are evolving, and right now they're evolving so much faster that you can't measure yourself against a static list. It's a moving target. How do you do that? Who does it for you? Who knows all the ins and outs? And this is why organizations like Virtual Graffiti and many others offer services around, getting you from A to B. Yeah. But in the spirit of changes, I mean, the Essential Eight themselves, it's not just the prescriptive guidance. It's also the prescriptive list called the Essential Eight, but there's also adjuncts to it. So guidance around mobility is one of the topics that we're going to talk about right now. And mobility doesn't really formulate part of the core Essential Eight, but it is an adjunct to the Essential Eight. And they provide some English language guidance around mobility and BYOD, or bring your own device, whether it's an iPad or your own personal phone. And so some of the changes really embrace the notion that an organization really has to take a hard look at their BYOD policy and how they allow or not allow employees and contractors to use that device in the context of work. And lots of government organizations specifically are quite nervous around, well, what are they going to do next? If they're providing guidance and highly recommending you do a risk assessment and instituting perhaps some difficult technologies like mobile device management, you can actually move the slide, Thad.
Cool. Yeah, I lost you for
Yeah.
a few minutes, like a minute there.
Oh,
My
really?
microphone kind of
Oh, okay.
crapped
Yeah.
out, but that's okay. It
All
seems
right.
like we're talking about BYOD
We are indeed.
here now, anyways.
Yeah, we got to move along here, right?
Cool.
So do that risk assessment is what they're saying, but a lot of organizations are nervous about, having an opt-in approach to MDM. Will it be enforced in the near future from the perspective of the Essential Eight and the ACSC? And so it's an open question, and the nervousness around having to implement MDM is a good nervousness, because mobile device management as a product set is quite difficult on a number of levels. One is many of the solutions out there, and I'm not here to kind of bag on any given vendor that does this stuff, but most of the time MDM is implemented either poorly or the actual product itself is poor. Just to use an English summary, it's not a great tool. It's not a great user experience. And let's put it into your shoes, Thad. You're an iPhone boy, as I know.
Huge fanboy here. Yeah.
Would you voluntarily enroll your own personal expensive iPhone into MDM on your own personal device?
Look, that's a tough call. I'd probably buy a second phone
Yeah.
for the organization. That's
And
me
why?
personally. Yeah.
And why?
Look,
Why are you nervous as an end user?
they do then control that phone at the end of the day.
Uh-huh.
And I do take probably the appropriate steps with my personal cell phone. It's, got the antivirus on there. There's some great products coming out. Apple has finally opened it up to antivirus vendors, putting scanners on there, which is great to see. But it's still your personal device. And this
Correct.
conversation probably comes up for me 4 to 5 days per week. Uh,
Yeah,
someone doesn't want to put a software token on their phone because they want to separate their work life from their
yeah.
personal life, and it's not a work phone. And I understand the argument completely. I really do. But then I guess you can't be as accessible with your personal phone to the org, and that's a problem for most people. I want my email on my phone 24 hours a day, 7 days days a week,
You're
and I
you're just that kind of guy.
yeah, exactly.
Well, there was a question in the chat, and hopefully I can help answer it. And we do appreciate the questions to come through. So, do you sync email and then sync contacts to personal phone? And the answer effectively is yes. So you'll have your office email basically munged together with your own personal contacts. It's happened on my phone in the past, and that's one of the aspects around MDM. There's different approaches. So another approach is something referred to as containerization, where literally everything in your work life is inside of a virtual container within the phone, and nothing gets in and nothing comes out. And that's kind of the security of it. You can browse your organizational data and use organizational apps inside of that container on the mobile device. And then that stuff doesn't get out of the kind of the virtual container bucket that it's in, right? But that makes it quite unusable from the perspective. It's good security, but it makes it quite unusable because the things that a individual user would expect to be able to do, say for example, copy paste or tap on an email to send a text message to somebody, things like that are usability things, don't exist anymore. You can't do them, even though you kind
Mm,
of expect them. Yeah. And so the notion is that a lot of organizations are nervous about MDM because of user training issues, user experience issues, lack of productivity, and then think of the system administrators who have to manage and care and feed this thing, right? And so is there a middle ground where you do risk mitigation at the same time as not needing to implement full-blown MDM? And there are solutions, both from the RSA perspective with our MFA app, and then others out there that do threat detection and mitigation and alerting and logging and all that good stuff without disrupting the phone. It's like a hidden service. Without you needing to manage the phone. And it makes it a lot more of an easier proposition to both the administrators and the end users to use that type of technology versus enrolling opt-in into a full-blown MDM solution. And it's a great kind of, in my opinion, with respect to BYOD, something needs to be done. You need to do a risk assessment, but have a look at some of these middle ground approaches that don't require full-blown MDM in the organization.
I was also reading somewhere the other day about the return of the hardware token, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is a good middle ground there. If you don't want if you want to use BYOD, have your email on your phone. Hardware tokens do exist for a reason still.
yeah, yeah.
And
And here's the thing is like
like,
back to kind of plug the ACSE. I mean, I don't work for them. I'm not affiliated with them. But I will say that they have PDF guides around doing that risk assessment and why you need it and when you should do it uh, for various types of data, like the classification level of the data.
mm,
So the higher the classified data up into what's termed as protected, the more the Australian Signals Directorate needs to be involved in that evaluation. Yeah.
and what I'll do is I'll actually link this into here right now.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah,
ASD
I'll
guide.
I'll share the PDF with the crew on the call here today because it's a really
Mm,
good kind of English level, easy to
yeah.
read, easy to digest piece of information.
They do make it super easy, right? And
Yeah,
they're
it's
a pleasure to talk to as
yeah,
well if you do
absolutely.
have those questions.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's mobility. That's what a lot of organizations are nervous about out there. Yep, this is the right slide. Thank you. So one of the other aspects, just to kind of just segue into our next topic, as it were, because we can keep this moving this morning, is the Essential 8 guidance around MFA or multi-factor authentication. And this has kind of been a long-standing principle in the collection of the Essential 8. And a lot of organizations, many business level people have no idea what MFA is. They just don't, and that's not their fault, right? But just to define it very quickly, it's multi-factor authentication. It's like an app on your phone or the SMS that you get from your bank when you try to do a transaction, right? And RSA obviously is well known for our various solutions, including cloud and modern authentication that does MFA. So what is MFA? Multi-factor authentication. It's something something that you have, like proof of possession, and then maybe something you are, like a biometric. And so, as stated, the Essential 8 is a living document, as it should be, and adhering to controls around the various maturity levels that live under MFA is obviously a moving target. And so what they've done with recent changes includes literally stipulating, calling out that thou shalt start to log and do audits across access related to multi-factor authentication, because who knows what's happening that you're not watching. If you're not watching, there's a risk there. And so the basics, in my opinion, the basics is to log what's happening out there so that you can forensically go backwards later if an incident occurs, and we hope it doesn't occur. So there's a range of sub-levels under your MFA control that they refer to as maturity levels. And this comes out of a US organization called NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, another guiding light in the security industry. And these levels are basically, the higher level, the more mature you are and the more secure you are, right? And so level 2, one of the changes is literally calling out level 2 as a physical device that you should use when authenticating, not just your phone. It's got to be literally a legit, dedicated physical device that does multi-factor. So just to contrast, why is this a change, or why is this earth-shattering? Well, that's really up to the interpreter, but physical tokens used to live under level 3, and they've been kind of downgraded into level 2. But in my opinion, it's actually upgraded because if you're going for one of the lower maturity levels, you are upgrading your security because the lower maturity level requires you to, right? And so the use of a physical device for multi-factor authentication is a great thing because it is essentially it's a device that is securely provisioned to you, and hopefully that you've done best practice with whatever vendor that you're working with to introduce that physical token to that end user. So you've provisioned it securely, and now that type of technology, because it's proof of possession, it's a physical device that you have to carry around, is a little bit better theoretically than a smartphone that you're already carrying around that could be breached and hacked. This is a single purpose device that can't really be hacked, right? Yeah.
Well, it's not just the phone hacking. I mean, probably the most basic one right now that we're seeing quite a bit is the SIM swapping, and we've seen that for years, right? The government wants it to be easy for you and I to go switch mobile phone providers. Fantastic, right? It introduces a lot of competition into the market. It's quite amazing, right? What some of these third party, I think I paid $30 for 100 gig of data per month. Incredible. But then
Let
Someone
me
can
get my
swap that SIM.
let me get on my soapbox for a second. So it was many, many years ago where the use of SMS text messages for the purposes of multi-factor authentication. You just get a text message with a code that you type into your banking website or whatever. That was deprecated from the guidance list from NIST many years ago because of many, many high-profile breaches that arose from SIM swapping. Some, very well, I guess you could say the phone companies themselves get social engineered, or the hackers pay somebody, an employee of the phone company, to expedite the swapping of the SIM. And what does that mean? Is that I redirect all of Thad's text messages to my phone using SIM swapping techniques, right? And that means that this opens up a huge risk in terms of leveraging the SMS phone network for delivering authentication codes. That's just not a good idea. And from my perspective, that SMS is dead to me and has been since 2015.
And
Never really.
Sadly, a lot of things still require
Yeah.
that MFA text. Really,
Yeah.
like I get them all the
But it's
time.
not
And
MFA, right?
yeah,
It's
or
much
2FA
less
text.
because
Yeah.
there's nothing like that. Because two-factor authentication is something you know and something you have, right? You've securely enrolled into some authentication using your phone, but there's nothing that's combined with the thing that you have, and
Yep.
therefore isn't two-factor. And the ACSE will definitely agree with me on that. They definitely take pains to define what is two-factor and multi-factor and so on. But moving on from there, that's my soapbox around SMS. Don't do it.
Oh, that's all right. We've got a tech question here from Damon. Do virtual SIMs present more of a security problem with mobiles versus physical SIM? Craig, I'll let you go first, and then I'll follow
I
up
mean,
here.
I'm not an expert on SIM card technology, but if you do have a virtual SIM, it sounds like it could be swapped quite easily because of the very nation of it being virtual. So from my perspective, I mean, SIM cards at the end of the day, whatever type and stripe you're using, run the risk of exactly the type of social engineering that occurs from hackers, right? And they are motivated. What motivates a hacker? Generally speaking, money. Where is all the SMS being used? In banking. So it's a huge risk, right? And I think that we need to uplift our game as end users, right? We need to expect or demand of our banking institutions to do something better. Be better is the main riff there. I hope that kind of answers your question. Or at
And
least,
I'll touch on this for a second
yeah,
too,
sure.
Craig. One thing that I did, which I think mitigates some risk, is I do have, my public facing cell phone. Many of the people on the call probably have that phone number. I get 0 MFA or 2FA texts to that number at all. And I've used a virtual SIM to get all those texts to. No one has that phone number. It's only I who know it. We don't publish it anywhere. And that, look, it mitigates some risk, but it doesn't make it foolproof at all. And that's really the
Well,
only.
and then another question in the chat there, I just squizzed at it. Is it really that common? Well, it's not super duper common. I'm going to be fairly transparent about that. It's not super duper common. But here's the thing. It's like you need to do a risk assessment. You need to do one because if you are leveraging for organizational data or sensitive data around the use of SMS in that context, you really need to take a second look. So it's really risk versus reward. As I said earlier, like you could do a Google search on the number of breaches that stemmed from SMS swapping or the other types of shenanigans that occur out there, and you'll get the phone book back. There's tons of examples, right? The most popularized one or the most prevalent one was Reddit in, I believe, 2018, where they literally said to everybody, don't use SMS. We got breached because of it. And so if you need to take a middle ground or like a halfway step, at least don't do it for your privileged accounts, your administrators with the keys to the castle. Look at your privileged users first and then work down, right? Yeah, so that's a middle ground there. SMS
And
is
I get,
easy, and go ahead. Sorry.
and I was gonna say that's probably where you should start first
Yeah,
for everything. Anyways,
always.
is there's
Totally.
admins and privileged
Totally.
accounts because they have the keys to the kingdom, right? They've got the secret vault. They can move
Yeah.
up and down throughout the organization.
Yeah, and at the end of the
Um,
day, a small to medium business can't afford to hand out hardware tokens to all their users. And it wouldn't make
hmm,
any sense to hand out hardware tokens to, say, the front office receptionist who has access to nothing, right? Like this
an
guy
email,
might
yeah.
have access to a calendar to schedule meeting rooms and things like that. I'm not disparaging, the role of the receptionist, but in terms of organizational data and sensitive data, they generally speaking won't have access to the keys to the kingdom, right? So,
Mm.
but moving on from this, like I could riff all day on SMS, and I need to kind of
I think both of us can too.
hold myself back a little bit.
Look, that last line here where it says unfishable
Yeah.
technology, and I think we were even chatting about what is unfishable before the
Yeah,
call.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
let's define that for a second, Chad. Thad. I called you Chad. I'm really sorry about that. I should call you
sorry.
Thad. So what is phishing? Phishing is that spamming text messages that you get on your phone all the time or in email that gets you to try to get you to click a link. Why do they do that? Why are they bothering, right? And the idea is that if the target application is protected with some form of multi-factor authentication, or sort of like a token or an SMS token, clicking that link actually takes you to a hacker's mock-up of the real site that collects that in real time. It collects what you type in terms of that code you've received, and then replays it back to the actual site. So you can literally use modern day tools right now, and don't get me started about AI, but even rewind the clock 12 months, you could literally be up and running with your own custom domain that looks like a real one, with a custom site that looks identical to the real one in less than 10 minutes, if you're
mm.
good. If you're
I
good.
saw,
And
I saw some the other day where it's like, had train your users to recognize, and it was like DHL, but instead of the L, it was actually an
a one.
uppercase, yeah, or I, to
Yeah.
where, or something else like PayPal, but it was an acrylic A, so you
Yeah.
couldn't actually tell.
Cyrillic, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Cyrillic text, yeah. So
Um,
there might be an umlaut over it that you don't notice or something, something stupid like that. I'm not
yeah.
literally saying umlaut, but the idea is that there are tools out there that are like kit bags that you can just deploy, register your domain, and off you go, right? And why do people do this? Is to trick you into inputting your codes, and then they replay them in real time. That's the basics. And so this is let's back off for just a second. Why do we care about this? Well, for obvious reasons, the skill level to implement such an attack is very low, and it's just gotten lower with ChatGPT and all of its awesomeness, right? But the second thing is, most breaches, this is verified by multiple breach surveys, most breaches stem from stolen credentials that were phished. I'll say that again, most breaches stem from stolen credentials that were gotten from phishing attacks. And so if you have a technology available to you that prevents that phishing redirection, that sexy replay that they're doing, if it prevents that, wouldn't you use it? And so that's what FIDO is. FIDO is an industry standard. So FIDO is an acronym. It's called Fast ID Online. And it's not an RSA contrivance, it's an industry consortium. And I couch it like it's the security industry getting its act together. And the security industry got its act together around phishing, in the years from 2016 to today. So generally speaking, FIDO keys are literally hardware tokens that underneath the nice plastic is a smart card. It's digital, it's cryptography. And what it does is it requires the participation of that device in the authentication conversation. Just so basically you're not only registering the device against the site is registering the device against itself. So it's a two-way conversation versus just spray and pray with an OTP code that you input somewhere. So because it's part of the real-time conversation, if a phishing attack comes in with man in the middle and it has some kind of fake website, it can't participate in that conversation. It does the key doesn't know what it is, and it doesn't know what the key is, and that redirect just cannot happen. They can't replay it because everything is encrypted and digitally signed, right? And so unphishable technology, the adoption of it in Australia has been near zero. It's near zero. And we, as an multi-factor authentication vendor, have been supporting and evangelizing the use of FIDO for many, many years, with the adoption rate being so low. I think that in the current context, like the current landscape around AI, where the barrier to entry is so much lower now, that the emphasis on security and taking these easy steps to protect cloud applications with unphishable technology like FIDO keys is going to see its day. But there's a problem. And the only problem is lots of so one of the problems is FIDO itself. It uses a protocol that only works on the web, right? Effectively. You can use it on the endpoint with Windows, using Windows Hello for Business, but that's not free, right? And the idea is that if you're a big, ugly organization, or you have lots of legacy stuff on premise, or it's very, very old and it doesn't support web protocols, it's not going to be able to use FIDO technology. So having a dual purpose device that does, so most applications do support, stock standard one-time passcodes. And having a dual purpose device that does both FIDO and OTP classic for the old applications, that's kind of like a really good middle ground. And so will you hand out FIDO keys to all your users? It's the same conversation as we just had, is you, generally speaking, you start with your privileged users. If you have administrators in your organization that have the keys to the castle in your SaaS application or your web application, you should definitely be using FIDO for those users. And if you can use one of these sexy devices, and I'm holding it up here, this is a dual purpose token that does both OTP to the old legacy crap that you have that lingers because you're a big, ugly organization and change is bad, and does FIDO to the more modern SaaS-related applications, then you're in a good place. So start with the administrators first. I fully support the ACSC mandating the use of FIDO in their guidance. And I know that it's not realistic for every single use case, but at least it's a start. And that's my riff on the updates to the maturity levels. And hey, another plug for ACSC, Thad, is keep on this. Like, if you are responsible for security or you're advising organizations on security, definitely hot link the ACSC website so that you can see the errata, the changes, and they're really good about showing you prescriptively what the changes have been in the last like 6 months. Yeah. So keep your tabs on it.
Just something that I noticed here too is quite a few of the essential light requirements that now say very explicitly event logs are monitored and logged, right? And, they're in a roundabout way saying you need to have centralized logging within your organization.
Yeah, it's one of the guidance. It literally
they're not
says
explicitly saying it, but they are saying essentially.
Yeah,
you need to
and
log
here's
it.
here's the thing, right? I mean, lots of organizations use SIEM technology, event management technology, but here's alert fatigue is a thing, right? You're watching the logs, so this is kind of off the rails, Thad, like off the track here. But the idea is that yes, okay, you might have alerts that come out of all the events that are happening and occurring in your organization, right? In my opinion, alert fatigue is a real problem. And the humans that are ingesting all of the insights that are theoretically gotten from event logs, it's not a human that can really manage it all. And this is a great case for AI. AI can manage, and you can do a copilot mode where you're querying, what happened today, right? I think there is a future state, a near future, where SIEM technology gets leveled up from the insights that can be gotten from AI, because we're in this very, very dire situation with SIEM and event alert fatigue and all the events, millions of events. Humans can't read them all, right? AI
No,
can.
there's no way.
AI
Yeah.
can. Yeah. And speaking of AI, why don't we segue to the next final piece this morning, is the death of biometrics. So biometrics, what is that, right? It's using your face, your voice, your fingerprints. It's the something you are in multi-factor authentication, as an example, right? And everybody here probably uses their fingerprint or their face ID to get onto their phone. Yeah. And so I'm kind of saying, hey, wait a second. the One of the things around AI that I personally have enjoyed in my personal life is the content creation tools, right? You can use tools like Midjourney and DALL-E and others to create really awesome pieces of art. Say, for example, the fireplace that you're looking at in our fireside chat. This was generated last night with Midjourney, right? Great outputs. I'm not, the best artist in the world, but Midjourney is a better one, okay? But here's the thing, is that the barrier to entry, like all things related to these AI tools and the LLMs, large language models, ChatGPT and so on, is that it lowers the barrier of entry for the skill set, right? And that applies to cybersecurity as well. We've said that a couple times today. And here's the thing, is that I'll give you a real life example of AI content generator being used for nefarious purposes. And there's an important reason why everybody should pay attention and start paying attention now, is that Lloyds Bank in the UK is a wealth bank that obviously does what wealth banks do. And there was an individual out there who fooled their voice verification system using an AI generated voice. So this person was able to conduct a transaction of monetary funds that was verified with their voice. And so the AI generated voice was able to fool it. So if you extrapolate from that example, does that mean, well, what happens with your face? I could use Midjourney to create a version of Thad that, had big muscles and had a sword and was like Conan or something, right? But could I replicate Thad to fool some kind of face ID verification system? And I would argue that yes, absolutely, because biometrics are probabilistic, not deterministic like other types of tech. So in English, that means probably. Probably isn't good enough for the ACSE. And it's not good enough anymore. And I'm calling that the death of biometrics is here. And now, will that mean that fingerprints will fall into that category? I could only argue that possibly, only from the perspective of 3D printers or, gummy bears, for example, the little candy gummy bears that are like licorice or whatever. They have been employed in the context of defeating fingerprint sensors. Now, does that put the Apple fingerprint at risk? I don't know, but I'm just extrapolating what could potentially happen. And I'm saying that my personal love for biometrics in multi-factor, I share it with the ACSE, is it's not good enough. Probably is not good enough. And so words for the wary. If you are responsible for security, maybe have a second look at biometrics, or if you're advising somebody in the industry, absolutely have a second look around biometrics, because I'm calling it right now. And by the way, I'm going to leave you with just one final thought. There is a major healthcare provider, not a provider per se, but an expediter. Let's call it an expediter in Australia, a major one that probably touches everybody on this call, that uses voice verification today. And they're still using it today. So I'm calling them out and saying, yo, guys, get your act together. You can quote me. Craig Dore, RSA. Get your act.
Remove voice verification. I'll
Yeah.
shoot them the message,
I'll let
Craig.
you
Don't worry. Yeah.
I'll let you derive who that organization is that touches, every Australian citizen. Yeah.
Mm, mm. I think too, every time one of these new technologies came out, and I remember when they said, oh, the fingerprint, you could lift it off, it's a security risk, and then the fingerprint sensors got better and
Yeah.
better built into the
Yep.
phones.
Yep.
Same with Face ID. They had to improve them because they could fool them, and often
Yep.
it's just software
Windows
updates.
Hello is the same thing.
Yeah.
I knew
So
twins. I literally knew a pair of twins that could
swap in and out.
swap each other because they look the same, and they fooled Windows Hello.
Hopefully not
I don't
a
think
big
they fixed
security
that
risk.
because Microsoft's a convenience company, not a security company. There's my
That is a tough one. Like, Craig, has your twin ever popped into work for you?
Yeah, well, my twin is female in my real life. So my real life, my sister Andrea. So we're not identical because she's female. So yeah, we don't fool anyone. And I don't really want to dress up as her, and she doesn't want me to. So, any other questions out there? Let's have a little look. Nope, looks like
no.
yeah.
We'll give everyone a minute here if they do want to type something out. I know we said we'd be
Madly
25
type.
minutes, but
Get ChatGPT to ask us questions. Just copy paste from ChatGPT. How do I stump the security nerd?
Let me paste in here some of the links here as well. The maturity model, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'll have to go and find there's a PDF that's really awesome. Yeah, here it is. It's a bit, let's see. I don't know how I'm going to get to that. Oh, actually, yes, I've got the link. So this is a great PDF on the mobility topic. So let me just paste that in there. So hopefully that's an okay link. But it is the PDF document that summarizes very nicely in English the types of things in terms of device selection, information classification, when you need to involve the ASD in your assessment. Absolutely, really gold, really gold. I think I think we've given the ACSC enough plugs today around the work they've done, but I legit believe that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and they do make it very easy for us to go reference things as well.
Yeah. And it tells you everything you need to know, right? I mean, they needed to do it many number of years ago to say, hey, guys, wake up, Australia. Let's up our game. I think
I remember when all the government departments failed the Essential 8 audit, and it's like, guys, you've had about 10 years to go do this.
It's a she'll be right, mate perspective, I think. But hey, let's wake up. AI is here. AI, we could have another chat, Thad, on the threats that are being not the hypothetical ones, but the actual confirmed instances of AI related tools being used as a weapon out there, being weaponized as we speak, like right now. And we should do this again and talk about that. What are you doing next week?
Maybe we have some other series here for a couple of weeks talking about the Essential 8. So cool. I think when that ends, maybe I drag someone in from NVIDIA and we have a chat about their large language models, and see.
Yeah. And then from a security perspective, yeah, I have a ginormous list, and it grows by the minute. What's the saying? It's like if you close your eyes for a month, you've lost a year in terms of the development that's going on right now. It's absolute explosion. So it's a very exciting time to be alive, Thad.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Thad.
No problem. And guys, I want to just thank everyone for coming as well.
Yeah,
Our team
thank you.
will be in touch over the next couple of days just to say hello, chat about MFA, and see if you have any other questions or if we can help you anywhere else. So, guys, thanks for joining. Craig, thank you again for hopping on.
Thank you.
And we'll catch up here shortly.
All right. Bye now.
Awesome. See you, everyone.